Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here. Today, we're talking about the power of saying no, which is really about how we make decisions about our time, energy, and our careers. For many women in print and graphics, heck, for women in every career sectors, it's easy to fall into patterns of constantly saying yes. This session is about stepping back and making those choices more intentionally.
This is especially important for women in our industry where being helpful, responsive, and reliable is often expected and rewarded. Over time, those expectations can quietly expand into overload without corresponding recognition or advancement. Boundaries are not barriers to success. They are tools for protecting your value and directing your growth. When used well, they help you build a more sustainable and strategic career.
So the first thing we're going to talk about is the cost of every yes. Every time we say yes to something, we are making a trade-off, whether we acknowledge it or not. That trade-off might be time, focus, visibility, or even personal energy. Many of us say yes automatically without pausing to evaluate what we are giving up in return. Over time, those small decisions can shape the trajectory of our careers.
In production-driven environments, urgency can make everything feel equally important. Requests come in quickly, and the expectation is often to respond just as quickly. I do that all the time, Kelly. I hear a ding, a ping, and I go searching for things. However, not all work contributes equally to your growth, influence, or long-term opportunities. So learning how to evaluate the true value of a request is a critical skill you can acquire for your career advancement.
So true. A useful shift is to start asking what each commitment is costing you, not just what it offers. Does it align with your goals, or is it simply filling your time? Does it create visibility, or does it happen behind the scenes with little recognition? Being selective is not about doing less. It's about doing what matters most in a given scenario, time frame, or group dynamic. So, Deborah, I just want to tell you and everybody a little measuring stick that I use comes from Martha Beck. And if you don't know who Martha Beck is, Google her and read her and follow her. She talks about every time you think about, do I say yes to this? The first two questions we have to ask ourselves are, do I want to do this? And do I have to do this? Which sounds simple, but isn't. I've been working on it for a while now, Deborah, and it's really helping me kind of do some thin slicing and kind of remove some things that I have kind of felt like I had to do and really been a little bit more honest about that. So I hope that's helpful.
Invisible work is one of the biggest contributors to overload, especially for women. These are the tasks that keep teams functioning, but are rarely acknowledged in performance reviews or promotion decisions. Examples include coordinating things, fixing problems quietly, or stepping in when something falls apart. Over time, this work can become expected rather than appreciated.
Yeah, Deborah, and this is where boundary creep begins to take hold. Small, informal yeses accumulate and gradually expand your responsibilities without formal recognition. Your role grows, but your title, compensation, and influence may not. If left unaddressed, this pattern can define how others see your value.
In pre-production settings, being dependable is essential, but it can also become limiting if it traps you in operational roles. So when you are the one that is keeping things running, you can miss out on other opportunities to lead, to innovate, or to actually gain visibility. So recognizing and addressing invisible work is a key step towards career fairness.
And so now let's talk about training people how to treat you. We're constantly teaching people how to treat us through our behavior. Our responsiveness, availability, and willingness to take on extra work all send signals. If we consistently say yes and respond immediately, Others come to expect that as the norm. Over time, those expectations can become difficult to change.
The important thing to understand is that people learn what to expect from us based on what we consistently do. If we always say yes, respond immediately, or take on extra responsibilities, those behaviors can become the standard by which we are measured. And over time, it becomes less about occasional help and more about what others assume we will always do. When you begin setting clear and consistent boundaries, people adjust. It may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if those expectations have been in place for a long time, but clarity helps create healthier working relationships. Others learn what to expect from you, and that predictability builds trust and respect. So setting boundaries is not about doing less. It's about making sure your time and energy are invested where they create the greatest value for your team, your organization, and your professional growth.
Changing these patterns allows you to shift from being reactive to being strategic. Instead of responding to every request, you begin to prioritize work that aligns with your goals. This creates space for higher value contributions and positions you for greater influence. Ultimately, it helps ensure your efforts are recognized and rewarded appropriately.
So, Kelly, I have a story that fits into this section. And when I was working in advertising agencies, the first job I had was called traffic. It was basically you are responsible for all of the internal organization of a project, where print production is the external coordination of everything that has to get done out of the building. And for a lot of that time, I decided I was going to be a freelancer because I could make more money. I mean, I was making ridiculous money because, they would be like, there's really sorry, we have to stay late. And I'd be like, I'll stay late because I was getting time and a half. And, oh, I'm really sorry, we have to work on the weekend. I was like, I'll do it. Nobody else had to do it. But what happened was that my paycheck started getting delayed and delayed and delayed. And I was, it was early in my career as an entry level position. So I was literally living paycheck to paycheck and, sometimes didn't even have money at the end of the month, and, I couldn't do it anymore. So I took all my job jackets and it was like a stack like that. And I went to the vice president of production's office and I said, I'm sorry, but I can't work here anymore. And I put the stack of things on his desk. And he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, I haven't been paid in a month. I'm supposed to be paid weekly and I can't pay my rent. I've got to go get another job right now and do something to get money. And, he was like, well, so he made all these calls to find out and there was some glitch and they were going to get me paid like in the following week, but my rent was due. So that wasn't going to happen. So I'm like, I'm really sorry, but until I get paid, I'm on strike, which was an insane thing to do, Kelly. Insanity. The guy wrote me a personal check from his own bank account. And he's like, here you go. Get back to work. Because if you don't do it, no one's going to do it. And everything is going to fall apart here. Not the entire agency, but the 10 accounts I had. So that was a situation where, I was like, if you value what I'm doing, then you've got to pay me for it. And if you're not going to pay me for it and you're just going to be like, oh, the check's in the mail, that I can't do that. So it was a crazy thing. Comments on that?
Yeah, I think it's a masterclass in boundaries. And the thing that I think is so important for people to hear in that story is not that you set the boundary, it's that you held it. At least you made it look like you were going to be willing to walk out that door.
Oh, I was leaving.
Yeah. That's what's so strong about it. So I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this or listening to it can recall a story similar to that where they wish they had held the boundary as strongly as you did. So it's a great example.
One of the biggest concerns about saying no is the fear of damaging relationships. In a collaborative industry like ours, maintaining trust and credibility is essential. The key is to communicate clearly, respectfully, and without over explaining. A well delivered no can actually strengthen relationships rather than harm them.
Yeah, and there are several ways to approach this. You can redirect by suggesting someone else who may be a better fit, or you can frame your response around priorities by asking what should shift if this new request is urgent. You can also set a clear boundary by stating that you do not have the capacity to take something on right now. Each of these approaches keeps the conversation constructive and professional.
It's also important to remember that no does not need to mean never. In many cases, it can mean not now, which keeps the door open for future opportunities. When you communicate this way consistently, people begin to respect your time and expertise more. That respect contributes directly to stronger positioning and career growth. I know that I trust people who say no more than I trust people who say yes to everything, because you're going to say yes to everything and then you have to figure out how to get it done instead of saying, let me check on that and I'll get right back to you, which is what we were taught in the advertising agency. You can't literally say no because the art directors and the designers might riot because you're telling them they can't do what they want to do. So you listen, you smile, and you say, okay, let me check on that and I'll get right back to you. And then you figure out how it can be done in a rational way that is actually possible.
Yeah, and I'm hearing in that it's all about respect, right? You setting that boundary, you even saying that I'm going to go check is really about respecting other people's time, respecting your own time, and insisting that other people respect your time as well. So as we move to kind of wrap this up, we're going to talk about a personal decision filter. And we're going to make this practical for you. So we're going to encourage you to use a simple decision filter before saying yes. Ask yourself whether the task truly needs to be done by you and what you will have to give up to make room for it. Consider whether it creates meaningful opportunity or simply adds more work. These questions help you pause and make intentional choices.
Also reflect on your motivation for saying yes. Are you genuinely interested, or are you responding to a perceived obligation or expectation? And most important, would you still say yes if no one noticed that you did it? We talked about that with Sarah O'Hannison, the productivity parade. Remember,
Yeah.
Kelly, where, oh, look at me, look at all the work I'm doing. And it turns out that a lot of people do not realize that you're doing all of that invisible work. They come to expect that that's part of your job. So the question of your motivation often reveals whether the work actually contributes to your visibility and advancement.
Yeah, and for me, Deborah, I can say that the overarching simple question that I have built into, again, my decision filter is what is the best use of my time right now? That has to be put against all my deliverables, all my responsibilities, all my accountability. And that is both personal and professional. So I try to think about, again, what I'm trying to accomplish every day and ask myself, are the tasks associated and the things that I'm doing aligned with that? And sometimes the answer is I have to put work aside for a little bit because I have to attend to something that's a little bit more personal. But for me, Deborah, the overarching, always returning to the question of what is the best use of my time right now is kind of what informs everything about how I manage my time, how I get things done, and how I can be more strategic about things that take longer and are a little bit more cumulative.
You know, it's a really interesting point you just made, and maybe you could expand on it a little, because At least in my Gen X brain, when I hear you say that, I have to sometimes not do work things because I need to do personal things, which is totally cool. But in my mind, I would be freaking out on how do I say no to this when that's the reason. And maybe I don't want to be perceived as, well, I shouldn't say maybe. I mean, women in the office and professional settings are, that affects everything, because when you're saying no, because I can't go to that meeting on Wednesday because, I've got a thing at school, or whatever potential gender roles you have in your family as far as that. So how do you say no in those situations? Are you fully transparent with the reasons, or how do you manage that when it comes at you when you can't deal with it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that I might be giving you a different answer if it was 20 years ago. But I think your question is the simple answer to it is yes, I'm always transparent about it. But there's something that you said earlier in this conversation that I think is very important, is that no doesn't mean never. Right? These are negotiations in a lot of situations. So, Deborah, to your point, if I can't do it at 2 o'clock on Wednesday, I'm always going to offer alternatives, right? So it's not never, it's just not right now. And
Right.
I will never apologize for, for centering decisions around my home life and my work life. And luckily, or for what it's worth, it does feel like the workplace is becoming a little bit more amenable to those kinds of decisions. Not to say that they're easy, but again, it's just not never, it's just not now. And again, always coming with and I can do this, or I can do it then, or let's negotiate and come up with a solution that works for everybody.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for your time and attention. Until next time, empower long and prosper.